Welcome back to Series 3 of the AB1GK Podcast. We're delighted to be back and we've got some great guests for you in this season. I'm joined by our brand owner, Asmir Begovic. Asmir, welcome along.
Well, Martin, it's great to be back with you. We always enjoy doing these podcasts, and the first 2 seasons have been a lot of fun. And listen, we get to start season 3 with a bang, with an absolute legend in the goalkeeping world, and that's Mr. Brad Friedel. Brad, welcome to the show.
Hey, Martin. Hey, Asmir. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing great, thank you.
Very good.
Not as good as you. Obviously, you just said you've had the birth of your 5th child, so congratulations.
Thank you, little baby boy. Yeah, so mom and baby are doing well, and that's all we can hope for, right?
Beautiful. That's amazing to hear. No, it's fun. We like to get on here on the AB1GK podcast. We like to get into people's careers, backgrounds, all goalkeepers. We've got a lot of listeners that are passionate about goalkeeping, and this one's going to be no different. So I guess, Brad, where we want to take you back to the beginning. I mean, so you were born in Ohio. How does a kid, and I always say this because I grew up in Canada, and this is soccer, good 30 odd years ago. This is not soccer that we see in North America today. How does a kid from Ohio get into soccer and goalkeeping?
It's a great question, because as I went through my my coaching badges all the way up to my pro license, a word that I always heard through the whole system was pathway. I'll tell you a little bit about my pathway, because it's just very unconventional. So growing up in Cleveland, it's like you're meat and potatoes. Growing up, American football, basketball, baseball. If you do something else, you're seen as a bit of an anomaly. Maybe be a good golfer or tennis player, but other than that, like, other sports weren't really accepted, except ice hockey, and I played a lot of ice hockey too. So I was just one of those kids that played every sport under the sun. And as it turned out, my youth club team, it was coached by a Spanish guy, and he was a lot different than most of the American coaches back then. Most of the American coaches were, moms and dads that they just wanted to hang around the kids, and soccer was a huge participation sport, but that's all it was. It was recreation. Even the pay-as-you-play monster club travel programs weren't even really in full swing back then. Little bit, they were just sort of starting out. So playing soccer with all my friends was just fun, and as it turned out, I was pretty decent. But I was also pretty decent in ice hockey and basketball and tennis. Those were my main sports. Hated baseball growing up. Couldn't stand it. So, and I ended up getting scholarship offers for tennis, ice hockey, and for basketball. Was an all-state basketball player, and was quite good. And I was only scouted by one college in all of North America, and that was UCLA. And I got seen by an assistant coach named Dean Wurzberger, who Dean and I stay friends today, as you do probably, Asmir, with people that really help your career out.
Yeah, definitely.
He can't remember, and I can't remember either. He told me once, but whether he had missed his flight and came back to the fields at this tournament I was playing at in Virginia, or if he changed it. He can't remember, but he came back, and that's where he saw me playing. And that's how I got the opportunity to go to UCLA. And back then we didn't have a professional league, so all the best young players went into college. Ziggy Schmid made phone calls, got me into the Olympic team, and that's how I got seen by Nottingham Forest back in '92. Like it was more luck. Like I didn't even think about playing professional soccer truly until after I was already at UCLA. My parents were middle class, had a sister, but didn't have extra money for the basketball camp, the hockey camp, all these things. So I would make the state team in soccer. Then I would go to regionals. I would qualify for the next event, but then had to decide between paying money for the basketball camp or ice hockey camp. And then I got good at those two sports. So then I was getting scholarshiped into the basketball camps and the ice hockey. So I just went for free, and I wasn't getting scholarshiped into anything for soccer. So I just, that's how I got into it. It was just fun, and I was always a good athlete. Looking back on this pathway, man, I didn't even, I supported Liverpool from 11, but my dad took me to a Charity Shield match between Liverpool and West Ham, but never once did I think I'd be putting on a Liverpool shirt. It seems so far fetched when you didn't even have a professional league in the U.S. So, luck, I don't know. I mean, yes, hard work, determination, all those words. I mean, but luck. I mean, come on, let's face it. You hit the nail on the head. I was from Bay Village, Ohio. There's no scouts went to Bay Village, Ohio in 1975. Then that's I think so 75, 76. That's when I started playing. We didn't have an academy. We didn't have. My big thing was going and watching indoor soccer, the Cleveland Force, and that's so I help and consult with the players today, and the young players 17, 18, 19, when they're not in first team games, they say, they get all upset and they want to move clubs and this, that, and the other. I played a full international matches and played in an Olympics before I played one senior professional club game. I didn't get my first club game appearance till I was 24.
Wow.
So it was a different pathway, different upbringing. Crazy when you look back on it and see what the kids in the United States have today, and it's fantastic. The U.S. soccer, MLS, I don't care. People can be haters and pick the bones out of single entity and no relegation and all that stuff. All they want, I'll tell you what the kids have today in the league and how big it's growing, it's phenomenal.
Well, no, I think, Brad, it's like I said, especially in the North American side of things, I don't think people realize they see everything today, the MLS, the USL, CPL, and then of course you have those pathways, and as you mentioned, the word it's completely different. And my journey coming from North America, it's a lot about luck. You just need someone to see something and somehow give you an opportunity. And whether that's coming to Europe or playing in North America, you went down the college route, which is also a very very good route, especially for goalkeepers. So I think it's something that's a lot to be admired of. And you go to UCLA, your first opportunity, and you run into a couple of problems when you come into England. So obviously Nottingham Forest, Brian Clough, some famous managers, Newcastle, Kevin Keegan at the time, they see something in you, and they try and bring you to England. But obviously you run into some work permit issues. Again, these are different times. We're talking about a few years ago. How was that move to England? How did it come around? How did you feel about everything? Obviously, again, probably from a family point of view, probably a difficult thing as well. I know you were playing with the U.S. national teams and the youth national teams, but it must have been a big move at the time.
It was huge. So I played in the '92 Olympics, and I came back, and after the Olympics, I still played that season for UCLA right afterwards, because you have another 25 games to play, and then I made the decision to try to turn professional and leave school a year early after that season in '92. Graham Souness was at Liverpool at the time, and that's when he first scouted me. And Tom Saunders, Liverpool legend, he came over and watched me train at UCLA. And we met and we had dinner, and he took back his report to Graham. And Liverpool was actually the first team that attempted to do a contract with me shortly after Graham resigned from Liverpool. And Brian Clough and Ronnie Fenton at the time at Nottingham Forest had seen me also at the Olympics. And they did offer me a contract based on a trial. So right at the end of the season at UCLA, I flew over and went on trial at Nottingham Forest. And that was the first year of the Premier League, 92, 93. So it was like Stuart Pearce was there, Roy Keane was there. There was that team. And And after a week's trial, they offered me a contract. I signed it. And at the time, I had no idea what, again, I mean, it's my naivety of what professional soccer was. I had no idea there was even such a thing as a work permit needed, other than just filling out paperwork and you get a visa. Growing up as an American, whenever you travel, you always just presented your passport and you were pretty much granted a visa wherever, most places that you went. And if you weren't, your parents sorted it out. So as a kid, you never realized these things. And I was denied a work permit by Ronnie, by Department of Education and Labor, and I didn't really know what to do. They went on appeal, lost on appeal because of the percentages of games. You had to play 75% of your national team games the previous 2 years. I mean, how you were going to do that as a 19 or a 20-year-old goalkeeper, I think is virtually impossible. And then what happened from that point on? I signed a contract with Newcastle, got denied a work permit, and ended up going to Brøndby, where I didn't have any visa issues. All while English clubs were trying to sign me. I signed a contract at Sunderland with Peter Reid and Paul Bracewell, and got denied a work permit there. And then,
did you not have an agent at the time telling you this thing, by the way?
Yeah, no, Paul Stretford was my agent, and he was working. He's actually he was one of the main reasons I ended up getting a work permit. He fought really hard behind the scenes, really hard. And I think as the story went, someone at Newcastle upset the PFA during this process.
Right.
Like, how can you, and Gordon Taylor ended up being, I didn't know at the time, he's a Blackburn supporter. And we became really good friends later on when I had 8.5 years at Blackburn. And he explained things to me. He's like, well, our job is to protect our members, and we have to make sure that there's a certain criteria that is to be upheld. And my case was one of the early cases where they brought in, really thought about the appeal process, because you have this young kid that Kevin Keegan thinks is good enough, that Graham Souness thinks is good enough, that Peter Reid thinks is good enough. I was also speaking to Bayern Munich at the time as a young player, at Benfica at the time, Sheffield Wednesday. All these people are saying that he's good enough, or he's young, so potentially good enough, but I can't get in. So I ended up going to from Brøndby. I ended up going to Galatasaray. Graham Souness got the job at Galatasaray and went out there. And that's where things really started to take off for me. We won a cup there. I was getting up to the amount of games needed for the work permit, and Liverpool came back in for me. So I actually had to do a short loan back to MLS. That when it turned into a permanent move for about a month or two. But we had to do all these crazy things to be able to get to Liverpool, because back then CONCACAF didn't play on international fixture dates. And I was going to miss about, I think it was like 12 matches for Galatasaray. And if anyone's ever been over to Turkey and you're one of 3 foreigners, that's all we could have back then, are 3 foreigners, and you're going to miss 12 games. You can't walk on the streets because they think that you're not for their club. And I loved Galatasaray, loved Istanbul, loved everything about it, but I wanted to go to Liverpool. So I did what was needed. And then, and you mentioned the agent, Paul worked tirelessly. And then we finally got the work permit to go to Liverpool in December of 1996.
Brad, it must have been an incredible feeling. You go to Liverpool, the club that you followed as a boy. What was that moment like when you signed that contract there and you knew that you were going to finally become a Liverpool player?
I remember I was in bed. It was an early morning, and I got the call from Paul, and he was shouting in the phone. We got your I don't know if you declared it. We got your bleeping work permit. Pack your bags. You got to do this, got to do that. And we still had to do paperwork with MLS. And MLS actually, for one quick second, tried to block the deal. And I had to fly to New York City and meet with MLS. And this is where someone who I respect a lot and has done a lot of great things for U.S. soccer, Sunil Gulati, stepped in and really helped make the transfer happen. I mean, at the time, it was the largest transfer from MLS anywhere by a country mile, even though it was only 1.3 million pounds. But that stayed on the list for a long time because MLS found it hard to get into the selling market. They yeah, and I was very grateful that Sunil stepped in and helped that along. And then I flew from New York City to Liverpool, and it was a lot of a lot of emotions going through the mind. It was 5 years, but I also had an incredible time at living in Copenhagen and at Brøndby and in Istanbul and Galatasaray. Looking back on it, I probably wouldn't change it because of the people and the club people I met, the clubs that I played for, the cultures that I learned, the languages that I got to learn. Just so like a remarkable experience. And then, as I think Asmir and I spoke about this briefly, or maybe we didn't on the program, but we were talking about consistency and goalkeepers or whatever. Looking back on my career, there were goalkeepers that could make more flamboyant saves than me, I'm sure. But I tried to be as consistent as possible in my career with fitness and performance. And man, when I 5 years I spent getting this work permit, and the most inconsistent I ever played in my flipping life was with Liverpool. And the first impression I gave on people, it was hard for them to trust me. And at Liverpool, you got to win yesterday. If you're not winning, you get replaced. And I love competition. I had no like David James wasn't happy. It's well documented when I came in. We're friends today, but back then, like he wasn't happy I was there and tried to make things difficult. But
David James, a grumpy guy. No way, don't. I know.
But JMO today, like he openly talks about it. Like it was the first time in his career that he was the guy potentially getting replaced. When he was at Watford and they signed to Liverpool, he was there to replace Bruce Grobbelaar. So he was the guy on the up and up. This was the first time that he was challenged, and he didn't know how to deal with it. He took it out on me personally sometimes, and Joe Corrigan sometimes. Today we laugh, we joke about it. We all mature and we grow up. But yeah, he had a hard time with me going there at the time. But none of that stuff like affected me as far as like why I played inconsistently. And if anyone's gone and played Galatasaray Fenerbahce game, you can kind of play in any rivalry. And I played well in those games, and whatever. So by the time I was consistent, they had already made their mind up to get rid of JMO and have me as the number two. And this I know I said I hated being a number two. I wanted to play. Yeah. So although I did not want to ever leave a club like Liverpool, I don't think anybody signs for a club like Liverpool and wants to leave, or very few. But I had to for my career.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, you go to a club like that, you work with, JMO, I think you work with Sander Westerveld.
Yeah, Sander, yeah.
I saw him yesterday, actually. He was doing a bit of TV before our game, so I said I was speaking to you today, so he said to say hello.
Nice one. If you see him again, say hello. And I saw his son. I remember when his son was born. Sem, he's a goalkeeper. He was. I saw him on a team sheet recently.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, because I know he had a son. I know the name of the son, and then it said Westerveld S, and I was like, and it said S Westerveld. In my mind, I was like jokingly, I was like, no way he's come out of retirement. And then I clicked on it. It said Sem, and I'm pretty sure that's his son.
No, and I think you go through that stage in your career, absolutely, where you really want to establish yourself and be that number one and really, really kick on and progress. And you make the decision to go again to Blackburn Rovers, where you reunited once again with one of your favorite managers, it seems, Graham Souness.
Yeah, so Graham and I, like, he liked me obviously in 92, 93 first and foremost, and then we both went to he took me to Galatasaray, and we had success there. I mean, he won a cup and ended up getting fired, but it was in Turkey, they do elections. And the president that won the election had promised the entire public he was going to bring in Fatih Terim. So he kind of had to. So Graham didn't lose his job because of lack of performance. It was more political. And I wasn't getting a regular game at Liverpool. He took over at Blackburn, and they gave him a really good budget. I mean, we signed mainly Premier League players that weren't regulars in the team. So I went at a very similar time. Mark Hughes went, Henning Berg, Stig Bjornaby, Craig Short. And Gary Flickroft was already there, but he had been Man City's captain, and et cetera, et cetera. We had a really talented squad at the time. And we were in the championship, and that was when I first signed. So I didn't know if I really wanted to drop, but luckily he put together a great squad, and we promoted that year. And then the rest was history with regards to my stint at Blackburn.
It was kind of kickstart an incredible time for you in the Premier League, didn't it, Brad? You went on and you set an incredible record. You played 310 consecutive games in the Premier League. It's unbelievable. As a goalkeeper as well.
Yeah, it was. I don't know what Asmir. I don't know if you've ever got to did you ever think, wow, I've played 20 in a row, or wow, I've played it never crossed my mind. And I was at Blackburn, and Mark Bowen opened the door one day, and we had a League Cup fixture, and he was looking around the changing room on some of the players that were going to have a day off and some rest and stuff like that. And he goes and he points at me. He goes, "Yeah, you have a day off." And he goes, "Oh no, your record. You're going to play." And I was thinking, my record. And at the time, I had a record with Blackburn that I didn't miss any fixtures, even FA Cup, League Cup, Europa League, and nothing. And so they were playing me in the game for the record. And I actually asked them. I said, "What are you talking about, record?" And he had to explain it to me. So then I carried on the rest of the time at Blackburn and went to Villa. And the next time I thought about it was I was walking off the training ground, and someone said, "You're breaking either David James or Frank Lampard's record at the time." And then I broke I think it was probably Frank's first. He was outfield player. I'm sure that number was lower. And then it was JMO. And I never really thought about it again until AVB dropped me when I shouldn't even have been dropped.
There you go. That's a bone to pick with him later on for sure. And obviously your path with JMO, I mean, because you guys, like I said to you in the program, you guys were inspirations even to myself, just the fact that you guys were able to come. I think one of the biggest things that sets professional players apart and gains respect is consistency, and being able to do something for so many games, for so many years, and do it at the highest level. I think it's really inspiring, and exactly what I was aiming for, and looking up to you guys. So, but I wanted to just touch a little bit on before we move on to your Aston Villa and then AVB and good old Spurs, but just some impacts of goalkeeper coaches. I mean, we know how big of a part they play in our careers and in our day-to-day work. One, of course, is coaches. I think they can be a sort of really good friend, someone you can talk to and really trust. So talk to us about some of the goalkeeper coaches that inspired you, that helped you throughout all those years, and what you liked about them as well.
I get to answer this question honestly, which is awesome, because I never like to talk poorly about people, if I can help it. But I was so lucky with the clubs I played for that, people ask me all the time, what was your favorite? I mean, if you look at the clubs I was at the time I was at them, they were all fantastic. The one little hiccup, I think, was when Liverpool tried the co-managerials. That didn't, with Roy Evans and Gerard Houllier, that didn't really work to have co-managers. But I understood why they did it, because they didn't want to get rid of a club legend like Roy Evans at the time. But I was so lucky. So goalkeeper coach is the same. So Joe Corrigan, I mean, even at Brøndby, it was the national team goalkeeping coach. I wasn't there that long. And in Turkey, it was he didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak a word of Turkish, and we became quite close at the end of the year when I learned some Turkish. He learned some English. Again, wasn't around him long enough, but then Joe Corrigan, he really pushed for me to get to Liverpool, and then was a great help. Take away the training of it was a great help off the field, because I wasn't performing as I should. He pushed for me to be there. He was having a terrible time with JMO, so we have we have a mutual bond, and by the time I started playing consistent, I really needed to go. But I know Joe, every time I played well, as my career went on, would always text me. I lived in Manchester most of my career, would always see Joe around, and he was really happy for me the way things turned out. I was when I went to Blackburn, not many Blackburn supporters, and I don't think the players really wanted me there, because they had Irish international Alan Kelly, who's a very good goalkeeper.
My goalkeeper coach
there
now.
you go, your goalkeeping coach now.
I won't mention that to him. That's fine.
Well, no, he can say he was a top goalkeeper. John Filan was Australia's goalkeeper, battling out with Schwarzer, but he was an international. You had Alan Miller, who was West Brom's Player of the Year 2 years before that. They had just signed. Blackburn was in the championship, and they're thinking, why are they bringing a guy that's on the bench at Liverpool here? We should be budgeting elsewhere. And I went to the day before I had signed. I was sitting in the director's box, kind of went up. I had my hat on and stuff. And there was a couple of older gentlemen in front of me in the director's box, and they opened up the program, and there was something they were talking about. We don't need this bloody American goalkeeper. He's rubbish. And I'm sitting right behind them. So when the game ended, I walked down by them, and they saw me. They couldn't believe it. They were like, "Oh dear, he heard us." They're like the proper gents, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe it." And they walked down, and it was odd, but Graham believed in me, so and he put me in. John Filan played the first game. Alan Kelly was left out of the squad. He wasn't happy. And I'll get to why I'm saying all this, but it was Roy Tunks was a goalkeeping coach at the time, and he did a great job, really managing all that, because it's not easy. You have every one of us had a right to start when you look at ability. Graham Souness brought me in, and I was chosen to play, and I obviously had to play well to keep my place. But Roy did a really good job on keeping the camaraderie and the energy and the competition in a good way at the club. I remember Alan ran out to me one day, or not to me, ran out from the training ground. He wasn't happy with a decision that Graham had made. And as he's jogging out, he looks at me and he goes, "How I act is no reflection on you, sir." And then I forget what he did or what he said to Graham. And I got it. You would get it too, right? Yeah. And I was always very respectful, to Hugo, for instance. It wasn't Hugo when I was dropped. I was very respectful to him. It's not his choice. I was even respectful to JMO. It's not us as the keepers that make the call.
Yeah, of course.
So so Roy Tunks, and he was really good, a technical goalkeeping coach, very, very good. And then Graham Souness went to Newcastle, and I had someone who I ended up hiring when I was a head coach to come in, and he's still at New England, Kevin Hitchcock. And man, it was fun with Hitchy, because I was senior now. I'd played a ton of games, was highly regarded in Blackburn. Loved Roy, and I joke with Hitchy, because I tried to make sure Hitchy didn't come to the club, and I tried to get Blackburn to offer Tunksy more money to stay, because I had such a good run. Nothing against, I didn't even, I only knew Hitchy from playing against him. And he came in, and the banter that he brought to the sessions was tremendous. It really was. we had a fantastic time there. And then when I went to Villa, it was Seamus McDonough. I don't know if you run into him. Asmir, he was really tough on young goalkeepers, but for an old seasoned guy, just by then I knew what my body needed was really good. And then I had another older soul in Tony Parks at Tottenham. And really enjoyed working with him. He didn't even know Tottenham had signed me. I'll get to that in a minute. So I think he was a bit frustrated. And then had Tony Jimenez after that with Mauricio, who was outstanding. So I stay in touch with a lot through, not every day on texting, but like if I saw Tony Parks, we'd have a good laugh. Seamus, we'd have a good laugh. I stay in touch mainly more frequently with Kevin Hitchcock, because he's over here at New England as the goalkeeping coach. But yeah, I don't know what you did, Asmir, as you got older with goalkeeping coaches. A lot of them were probably not nervous to come talk to me. I mean, they've been around the game, but like probably nervous that I would only want to do my training as I got older. And I never did that ever to any of them. I always said, you show me what you do, and if we need to tweak something, then we will.
Couldn't agree more. Do you know what? It's so true. I think once you get a sort of reputation, you're in the game a few years, and they want to bring in maybe an experienced goalkeeper for different reasons, and they're like, oh, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you feel? And I said, you're the coach. Do the sessions. We'll work. Let's enjoy. Let's have some fun. I'm sure you know exactly what you're doing. You wouldn't be here at this level either, right? If you didn't. And then, as you rightly said, if I need to just add a couple things and manage certain couple of things, of course, we'll communicate, build a relationship, as you rightly do. And it's definitely something that happens. I mean, it's been dead easy here at Everton, for example, because Alan Kelly has been in the game his whole life, and we started from day one, never asked any questions. You know what I mean? But sometimes you're right. There is coaches that are a little bit apprehensive and a little bit, I wouldn't say showing too much respect to things, but which is great, of course. But at the same time, you want them to do their role and be the coach, and of course, you just want to worry about goalkeeping, which is the most important thing. So I totally get that.
The only thing I'm laughing here because the only thing goalkeeper coaches, like my match day routine was mine, right?
Yeah,
like
that's different. That's different. I'll give you
that's mine.
30 minutes is ours. Yeah.
And I used to do, as I got older, most of my warm up was a yoga routine. Like I mean, if I caught, I don't know, like 6 volleys, half volleys, 2 or 3 off of each post and a couple of crosses. Like I mean, the amount of goalkeeper coach would look at me and be like, "That's it," and I'd be like, "Yeah, that's it. What more do I need?" Like, I mean, I can see if it's windy. I can see if the ball's wet. I can see my gloves are working. Like I'm 40. What do you want me to do? A training session? But from Hitchy on, like in my career, everyone was like laughing at my match day warm-ups. They like could not believe how short they were. Asmir, if I like dove around for 8 minutes in total, it was a lot. And I never took shots from any outfield players or anything. It was just me. When I was younger, it was different. But as I got older, that's just how it was. So they were always made fun of that all the time.
That's interesting. That's fascinating. And I'm sure Martin will know. Like we've talked about this all the time. What the goalkeepers do, what the players do to get ready, and that's a tip for youngsters. We've been saying this from many different episodes and different ways with other goalkeepers. Eventually you find something that works for you. It doesn't have to work for someone else. You establish what works, and then you just stick with it. And of course, maybe as you get older, you need less or whatever it is. But you're right. I mean, I work with David James. Mine now are 20, 25 minutes, and people say, "Oh, do you need more?" No, totally fine. And you look at other ones and you pick things that work for you. And it's a great tip for youngsters. Establish what you like, how you want to do it, and then be consistent with it.
Well, JMO at Liverpool, he would go out and catch a few balls. And he used to go in so Joe Corrigan, this was one of my first games. I was on the bench. And then he said, Brad, can you jump in the goal for shooting? J-Mo used to join the line and take shots.
Did he used to punch crosses away for you too, or just me?
Did he do what?
Did he punch away the crosses?
Oh,
like
yeah, if the ball
man,
wasn't...
used to like freaking... Oh, you never seen it. He used to like hammer him out the stadium.
Yeah, and he used to, and if he didn't like the way you crossed the ball, or if you ever took a shot on him and the ball knuckled a little bit, like he never did it on purpose. The guy used to pick the ball up and punt it about 600 yards away.
Oh my God.
I remember one Mark getting on to like coaches and like what do you want to do? We beat Man City first game of the season after I had signed for Villa, and I was 37. And we were in for a cool down the next morning, and Martin O'Neill was outside on his phone. And I walked in, he's like, don't go in. Hold on, don't go in. He finishes his phone call, and then he puts it down and he goes, brilliant yesterday, brilliant, magnificent. When do you want to come in again? I'm like looking at him, I was like, what do you mean? He goes, no, he's like, you're an old, you know what? He goes, when do you want to come in? You can, I know you can just stay at home. You can do what you want. You want to come in on Thursday or Friday, or, it's okay. You can just stay there. I know you'll stay fit. And I was like, and I said, Martin, no, like, when's the team in? He goes, that doesn't matter. It doesn't pertain to you. And I was like, well, Martin, I said, at my age, I need to train. Like, I don't have to train for 3 hours a day, but I got to train. If I don't, I feel terrible. He goes, well, that's up to you. And I'm like, when I went into the big gym and told him the conversation, the sports science guy, he was like, his hands in his head going, no, Martin, you can't do that. That was funny. But like, I think that's one of the reasons that made Martin so good in his day, is man management skills, because there were players that would have taken him up on that and could have thrived. But it was funny. Not once in my entire career did I ever get asked when I wanted to come in.
That's quality from Martin. I know you played under some top managers as well, didn't you? Was it Gerard Houllier?
Yeah, he
God bless him.
Twice, 2 times, at Liverpool and then at Villa. And at Liverpool was different. Like, he was the one that I eventually had to push myself out of the club, but he was also the one that did magnificent things to reboot Liverpool that was needed. So we didn't see eye to eye all the time at Liverpool, but I think I know he always respected me, because even when I wasn't happy at a club, I always worked hard. I was never one of the ones that would turn up to training and not put an effort in, or fake injuries and that. I never did any of that. I always worked hard. So even and I even stated to him, they offered me a new contract as I was leaving to go to Blackburn. And I told him, I was like, I don't want to leave Liverpool, but I can't be a career number 2. And I just can't. And I think at the end he understood it. When he got to Villa, we had somebody wrote an article that we were like at loggerheads with each other. I mean, we were very, very good at Villa.
You never know. That's the press. That's what I said. Don't believe everything you read.
Yeah, it was funny. One day he goes, Brad, can I see you? And we were walking off the pitch, and I said, yeah. He goes, apparently you and I had a massive bust up yesterday. And I said to him, I said, we were off yesterday. And he goes, I know. He goes, it's the press. And I was like, but you and I? And he goes, yeah. I was like, what paper? And he told me it was the Daily Mirror, and I called the guy who wrote it. I think it was Custis at the time. I was like, where did you get that from? He goes, oh, a source inside the club. I was like, we weren't even in yesterday. He goes, so did you have a row with him? I said, you're asking me now, and you already printed the story?
It's terrible.
Journalists at times.
What are you going to do?
But there you go. Don't believe everything you read, people. That's what we tell everyone all the time. But to finish off, a couple of things, a couple of your last moves in England, Aston Villa and then Tottenham afterwards. Again, 2 giant football clubs. How did you enjoy those experiences?
Really good. So I had the opportunity to go down, and really be more or less, a two club player in England. I could have signed a new deal, as you can imagine, at Blackburn. and see my career out. You know, I was 37 years of age at the time, and they did offer me an extended deal, but they were also in the process of selling the club. I had the opportunity to go to Man City or to Villa in that off season, and I chose Villa. And incredible, you know, Randy Lerner and Martin O'Neill. They had the first 2 seasons I was there. It was magnificent. Really was fun. The first season we were probably one player short from finishing in the top three. Fell off just a couple of, you know, we lost 1-0 to Liverpool at the death at home, and I think there was one other result like close that went against us, and we dropped down actually to 6th, but I think level points is 5th and a couple out of 4th or whatever. But if you've never been at Villa, it is a sleeping giant of a club.
Yeah.
Stadium, fans, catchment area, training ground. The way that they treat players at Villa is superb, and the families. And if they're having a great season this year. If they kick on, if somehow, some way, and I know it's really hard, but if they can get into the European places, just one season in the Champions League, and they go and invest, they could be there for a while. They're set up to be huge. So I really enjoyed that. And then I don't know fully what went on with Randy Lerner and and the club, but when it was a little bit of unrest financially at the club my 3rd year, and I saw out my contract, got offered a contract there, got offered a contract at West Brom with Roy Hodgson, but I didn't feel at 40 years of age to do like a crosstown rivalry move. And Liverpool offered me to go back to Liverpool as Pepe Reina's number 2 and to work in the academy. And I was giving that some serious thought at 40 years of age. And how I went to Tottenham was I went down and was doing some television work. And on the train ride home, one of their scouts was on the train and asked me, who lives up in Manchester, and said, "Hey, what are you doing next year?" And I told him, "I'm deciding now." He said, "Why don't you come to Tottenham? Let me call Harry." And we got on the phone on the train. Then I really liked the sounds of it. Spoke to Daniel Levy and
who needs an agent, right? Who needs an agent?
I signed a 2-year deal and then ended up doing 4 years there. You know, the first 2 were they're all as a player, but but they were really honest to me. Daniel, he said, first year, provided your form is up, you'll play. Second year, we are looking for a long-term number 1. I mean, and of course, you're 41 years of age at that time. You're not going to think you're going to be the long-term suggestion for a club like Tottenham. So I said, "Oh, that's brilliant." And then they saw my fitness, so they gave me another one. I started doing my B license and moving on to my A license. And then Mauricio came in, and they saw my fitness again, and I did another year. And then went into my pro license. And the funny thing is that at the very end of it, Mauricio told me, he's like, "You know what? You can do another year. You don't have to retire. You are fit enough." And I was like, 44, Mauricio, time that I grow up and go on to my next venture.
You've both played under Harry Redknapp and Mauricio Pochettino, the pair of you. What?
I haven't had the pleasure of Poch just yet. You never know.
Yeah. What was it like under Harry as a manager? An intense character, legend in the game. What was he like?
For senior players, not intense at all.
Not intense.
No, for me, pretty mellow. I mean, very. I spent most of my days with Tony Parks in the group of goalkeepers, and we had senior. We had a lot of goalkeepers and good. We had Carlo Cudicini was there, Aurelio Gomez was there, David Button was there, Ben Olnick was there. Michel Vorm came in after. Hugo Lloris was there, obviously. Jordan Archer, young Lawrence Vigouroux. Like we had a lot of goalkeepers that came in and out of training. But with Harry, as long as you perform, he signed senior. He liked to sign senior seasoned professionals that knew how to be pros and knew how to perform. He was not an attention to detail day to day kind of manager. Um, he was he he knew how to sign players at a club to get results for the football club. And so I had a really good relationship with Harry. I don't think we actually I can say this emphatically, never once had words with each other, not one time.
Yep. No, I see the same. When we had Harry at Portsmouth, and very much like you said, Brad. Day to day, let his coaches, let his assistant coaches take most of the training. He would add some things more as you go closer to a game, maybe a couple tactical points. But other than that, he just let you be in the same at Portsmouth. Besides senior pros, Sol Campbell, Sylvain Distance, David James's, Rydersons, all those players that just knew how to look after themselves and perform in a weekend, which is what was most important to him. And if you did that, great. If you didn't, then he'd look for someone else. So
Yeah.
it was really as simple as that. But no, Brad, I think I wanted to move on to your national team career.
Okay.
Your national team career. So over 80 caps, I believe.
Yeah. 82, I think.
82. I didn't want to say anything wrong, so I said over 80.
Yeah.
But tell us about your national team career. Obviously, the American national team has come on so much over so many years now and really had a great tradition of American goalkeepers. I mean, I don't know what was in the water over there, but definitely had them, coming through. So you were playing with some great goalkeepers as well, and obviously performed for many years. How do you look at that experience?
Yeah. So the goalkeepers, we always had. You rightly said it. Always had good goalkeepers, so we always had competition to get better. And I think like the main competitors for me at the time were Tony Meola, Jurgen Sommer, and Casey Keller. And at one time, Tony was playing in the U.S., but Jurgen, Casey, and myself were all in the Premier League, and it was a very healthy rivalry, but a good one. We always wanted to be playing. We always wanted to be better than one another. When we went into national team camps, we all got along well. So it was good. And playing for your country, as you know, is the pinnacle of your career. I guess the only downside that I had, and one of the reasons why I retired so early. I mean, I retired in 2004. The reason for that, we had this back in we had the World Cup in '94. And in 1995, they were still offering us the same amount of money from like 1990 to be a part of the national team on your bonus structure, and the board members were getting paid out large sums of bonus money and things of that nature. So we had this committee set up, and it just seemed like we were forever in these meetings. Every single camp, and we had to threaten to go on strike 3 times, and we actually went on strike one time at the Copa America in '95. And by the time it was 2002 was over, it was exhausting. And I know the players today are benefiting from what we did, but when you're on that committee and you were flying 11 hours, 12 hours to go play a game, going down to Central America, then flying back and having to play in a Premier League game. You don't get back till Friday, and then you're playing a Premier League game on Saturday. It's tough, and it took its toll. And then when you're there, and mentally you're always in a negotiation with the federation. I needed the mental and physical break at my age, and that's why I ended early. But I also had some of the best moments of my life and career playing for the national team. So I do not have a negative taste on it, but people ask me often why I retired when I did, and that was the reason.
I remember well that World Cup in 2002. You were exceptional in that World Cup. I remember it really well. What were the memories of that World Cup? You went to the quarterfinals, didn't you?
Yeah, we had so that squad you could, of all the squads that I was involved with in the U.S., you could rival. You'd probably say it's the best U.S. squad that's been assembled. I think people could compare it to this past squad. I still think that one was a bit better. And no, I'm not jealous for saying this and all that. I say it how it is. I just think we had players like Claudio Reyna, who was pivotal at his club in Europe, starting being one of the main guys on the team. John O'Brien was one of the main players at Ajax at the time. Those were the two guys we had in the middle of midfield, and they could boss games against the best. And if you can control the middle of the pitch in football matches on the international scene, that's a long way to going to win the game. We also had guys like Brian McBride. Our young players were DeMarcus Beasley and Landon Donovan, who both had wonderful careers. We had Tony Santa was at Hertha Berlin, Frankie Hayek, Bayer Leverkusen. Eddie Pope is the best U.S. defender I've ever played behind. He actually played his whole career at, I think all of his career, most of it. Maybe he moved at the very end at DC United. He stayed in MLS, but I'll tell you, he could have played anywhere. Like, he was that good. Sorry, someone was calling it. We had tremendous competition. A lot of guys, not just sprinkled in Europe, but integral parts of their club teams in Europe. The team that Bruce Arena assembled with the MLS guys were all very good and hungry. And it was the first and only squad that I was a part of in any Olympics or in any World Cup where players weren't just happy being part of the squad. They expected to be part of the squad, and they expected to be part of the starting 11 and weren't happy if they weren't in the starting 11, if that makes sense. Because, American soccer is behind, especially back then, than the rest of the world. So a lot of moments would go by where players were just really happy to be there. This squad in 2002 was different. Everyone, Ernie Stewart expected to be there. Joe Max Moore expected to be there. Eddie Lewis expected to be there. When Steve Cherundolo got hurt while we were over in Japan and Korea before the tournament started, he was devastated. Carlos Llamosa thought he should be starting. Jeff Agus thought he should be starting. In a good way, the competition. Clint Mathis thought he should be starting. We had Josh Wolf thought he should, Kobe Jones. Like, we have all these guys thought they should be starting, which was fantastic, because when they did appear, even from the subs bench, they were ready and they were hungry. And we had some good players.
No, that's awesome. And I think that was a huge step in American soccer. So, Brad, obviously you've played for all these clubs, over 500 professional games. And then after your playing career, you moved into management. I mean, what are you up to these days? What are you looking to do? How do you enjoy your post-playing career?
So I've done pretty much everything now. Like, dabbled in it other than maybe club ownership. Since my career, I've worked in the media as well, and I still work in the media from time to time, as you know, as we were on BBC together. So I'll tell you what job I loved. The head coach of the under-19 U.S. national team, working under Tab Ramos, who was the under-20s. I was the head coach at New England. Enjoyed it, of course, but really enjoyed the federation, because what I found was players that were already professional in MLS. At the time, some of them were disgruntled because they felt like the salaries were too low compared to the rest of the world and felt they should be on more, but didn't act like professionals. So it was hard for me to accept where that mentality was. Simple things. I'd be like, we're wearing the blue polo to dinner. Oh, why are we wearing that? Why can't we wear our own clothes? Why? I never went through my whole life questioning, like, if Graham Souness said you're wearing a coat and tie to the game, you did it. Like, I never said, that's not good enough. Let's get a group of players to go talk to the coach. I'm like, I couldn't, they wanting to have multiple days off, and if they didn't get it, or I think MLS rules were they had to have a mandatory 1 day off every 11 days. Travel days didn't count as days off. So if you had 3 games in a week and you were just doing recovery sessions, like you got in trouble as a head coach, and the players would actually report you to the union. It was strange. So anyway, with the 19s, you got although they were young, you got top pro mentality. The Weston McKinneys, the Tyler Adams, the Josh Sargents, all these guys that came through the program, and they were so professional. I loved that because they wanted to get better. And now I work as a consultant and as an agent. And I'll tell you, I think what I really like and what I'm learning a lot of is possible the technical director. Asmir, the role that I would really. Did you hear that last bit?
Sorry, we lost you there for a second, Brad.
Oh, sorry. Where did you hear it?
You mentioned that you started working as an agent and consultant.
Yeah, agent and consultant. And I think after learning, and I'm still learning more on the business side. I think I think what really interests me at this stage is possible technical director, sporting director at a club. I think that's I enjoy the agency work, but I also really enjoy the day-to-day of football. So whether I go into coaching again, I'll really be careful of what's above me at a club, as opposed to what's below me at a club.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. But I'll be involved in the game nonetheless.
Well, Brad, I'm a free agent this summer, so if you don't know of anything, let me know.
Free? Well, let's talk off podcast.
It's been a fascinating story, Asmir. He's had an incredible career, isn't he? It's come from such a different background to many goalkeepers that we speak to on this podcast. But what an incredible career.
Yeah, no, absolutely one of the absolute very best. But listen, Brad, a couple more things before we let you go. We are a goalkeeping brand, so we can't let you go before we talk about gloves.
Okay.
We love gloves.
What was your first pair? What did you like in your gloves? What cut did you wear? All that kind of good stuff. Tell us.
Okay, so when I was young, the gloves that I love were the Royce, the Windstopper.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that. I mean, how old are
I
you?
do.
You're 30.
I'm 35.
35. So I'm 52 this week, so I'm a bit older. So there's a Royce Windstopper. But when in 1993 I signed with Sondico and I designed my own glove, and I like the roll finger, and the enclosure. I like the elastic enclosure. Didn't like the straight palm. I have no idea the thickness that I like because I went to the factory and caught a whole bunch of balls and I said, this is the one I like.
Nice.
And I'll tell you what I did my entire career. So I changed to Adidas, and then I changed to Under Armour, but I always gave them my glove I designed in 1993. And I said, you guys can sell in your stores whatever you want, but this is what you have to make for me.
There's a specific glove, specific fit, specific feel that you liked.
That I liked, and then on the top it was obviously different when I changed to Adidas and then Under Armour. But the cut from the finger and everything was always the exact same. So the elasticated enclosure came into play in 1995, I believe, because at first it was the one that had the little opening at the wrist.
Yeah, like those V-knot centuries, yeah.
Yeah, so from 1995 until I retired in 2015, I wore that glove.
That's quite interesting, to be fair, Asmir. I've not heard of any other goalkeeper that's done that. That's moved. Obviously, tried to. Obviously, the branding's always changed, but the actual glove body has always been the same. It's quite interesting, to be fair.
We've got another traditionalist here. I mean, I'm quite your old school glove. I'm more of a negative cut, so you're a roll finger, Brad, which is interesting. I've heard of a couple, Martin. I think Fraser Forster was a little bit particular. I think Jordan Pickford now at Everton, he's got two sort of flat palm fingers, and then the index finger and the pinky finger a bit more of a negative cut. So, yeah, goalkeepers can be specific. I mean, we find in our business, I think once you like something, that's what you like, and then
They're
you
your
don't want to
tools,
wait.
aren't they?
And I liked it. I didn't like when there was much room to move. Some goalkeepers like a bigger glove. I liked mine really snug. So sometimes it would rip off the middle finger, your biggest finger, because that was the tightest. But I had it cut so it wouldn't encroach here.
Nice. Well, there you go. Good to know. Well, I think we wish we could have looked after you at AB1, but hey, that's the way it goes. But Brad, we're going to finish off. It's a new thing we brought out this season. We're going to finish off with a bit of lighthearted stuff on the pod, and we're going to give you five quick fire questions, and then you just let us know your answer, and then that's the way we'd like to finish off the pod.
And it's a prerequisite I have to answer.
Well, I think they're easygoing. They shouldn't be too controversial. So, I'm going to go first, then Martin will go after me.
Okay.
Your most favorite game you've ever played in?
World Cup, playing against Mexico in the knockout stages, beating them 2-0.
Best striker you've ever played against?
Best striker I've ever played? Oh, come on. Wow. I mean, I've played against them all. Can I go like best attacking player I've played against?
Yeah.
Camp.
Amazing player.
Tell you what, that's a good choice.
That's a great shout.
Favorite stadium ever played in?
It can be international or club, or should I do one for both?
Anything.
The old Ali Sami Yen in Istanbul, when it got rocking. That's. I mean, it's old, it's rickety, but it's the best noise that you could hear in your career.
My final one's your favorite roommate.
Joe Max Moore, U.S.
There you go. Well, I probably know the answer to this. I had it written down earlier, of course. But your favorite manager you've ever played for?
I answer that like the goalkeeping coach question. I mean, look at the Martin said it earlier. Look at the managers I played for. Like I owe a lot to all of them. Mark Hughes, he was a teammate and friend of mine, and he was a great manager. So my second 4 years at Blackburn, Graham Souness had huge parts to play in my career. Seeing how Martin O'Neill did things, and Harry Redknapp, AVB, Tim Sherwood, all different, and I learned from all of them. I would say, like, going into the modern game, Fatih Terim was a tremendous head coach too at Galatasaray. Going into the modern game, I would have to say, like, Mauricio probably tops everybody as the modern games evolved. He was incredible. Attention to detail, man management style, passionate and compassionate at the same time. The way that he incorporated the academy into the first team, what players to be hard on, not hard on, and and in the modern game when all the young players are expecting success immediately, and how he dealt with it, and he was outstanding. I'd probably have to put him at the top of the tree, but like of a very high tree.
That's amazing. So you think he'll be a success at Chelsea?
Yeah, I think right now he's the best with what's going on at that club right now.
Yeah.
As long as he gets full authority, which I can't see him signing a deal unless he has it. Yeah, he'll be brilliant. Tell you what, he is fantastic at galvanizing confidence out of players who have lost it. He's very respectful of people as human beings. So even the players that he needs out of a club, he does it in a very respectful way. but he also, when he needs to be hard, he's Argentinian. He doesn't have a problem with it. If you disrespect him, it makes it easier for him to do. But he'll always be able to make the hard decision.
I spoke to another player that played under him the other day, and they raved about Maurizio Pochettino. Said he was an incredible guy, and you go into his office, and the four of them are always there. He's never on his own. He's always had the four of them when you went in the office. But they said that he wanted you to know about your family, your life, and he made you feel important.
Correct. And Asmir, he was the only coach in my whole career that not just have a couple of shots at the end of training and stuff. He used to come over twice a week, just about twice a week, and join in the goalkeeping session with Tony Jimenez.
Wow, interesting.
Not catching the ball, no, but doing the service.
Yeah, just helping out.
Yeah, sometimes for like 30 minutes.
See, that's something that struck me about Poch is that what I've always liked, he's got his own, obviously, his coaching team. They're really close. They don't work with other people or anything like that. And I think that's always something that I've seen with top managers. Like, as much as they're top, I think their team, their support staff is really, really important.
Yeah, Miguel, Jesus, and Tony along with them, they're an outstanding coaching staff.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a big success. But listen, Brad, you thought we might let you off the hook, but there's still one more thing. We might have saved the best to last that we have to touch on. And you and I have one thing in common. Well, more than one thing, but just the one thing, the main massive thing. But you have scored a professional goal.
Yeah.
Just rewind us to that moment and tell us a little bit about it, because I know I've talked about mine, but it's not.
Asmir speaks about his as a bit of a lucky punt downfield, but got caught in the wind. Yeah, quite intrigued to hear about yours.
Thanks for playing it down, Martin. Appreciate it.
we were at the Valley. We were playing really poorly on the day for our standard, and I think there was some issues going on at the club. You know, like we had, I think Yorkie was on the bench, Coley was on the bench, two guy was on the bench for whatever reason. And they came on in the second half, and we started to pick up, scored a goal, and I think about three minutes from time, I went up for a corner. So Brett Emerton took it. It was a really poor corner for his standard. It went way over my head. And it was one of those where you're standing about the penalty spot, Asmir, and you think, should I sprint all the way back? Like, does it matter if we lose 3-1 now? Like, we're not scoring. That's a long way back there. And so I stayed up, and Paul Gallagher got the ball, and he cut and then kind of scuffed his shot across, and then deflected in my path, and I put it in with my left foot, and then just got mobbed. But I don't talk about it often because I conceded a goal. I actually slipped a little bit on it. A goal I think I should have saved. Watching it back, and we lost 3-2 after clawing it back to 2-2. So I remember for like
we'll ignore that part. We'll ignore.
Yeah, that. I know. But after
we'll cut that.
Like the couple months afterwards, I kept having reporters wanting to talk about it, and I wouldn't. I was like, guys, I'll talk to you about anything. I'm not talking about that game. We lost.
Listen, we'll focus on the goal and the good stuff. This is a very positive podcast. But listen, Martin, this was a blast, huh?
It was an absolute blast. Yeah. I think when you talk about Brad Friedel, I think he's still very fresh in the memory of anybody that watches the Premier League. You're still well spoke of and so well thought of here in England. It's been a pleasure having you on our podcast today, Brad.
No, thanks for having me, guys. It's nice to go down memory lane sometimes. I'm getting older, so I'm going to have to hang on to the memories for as they become further in the distance.
Absolutely, and it's always a pleasure to talk goalkeeping. We have to stick together, so there's no doubt about that. But listen, Brad, honestly, we can't thank you enough for your time. Best wishes to you and your family, the future, and obviously your newborn. So thank you again, and I'm sure our paths will cross down the line.
Nice one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brad.
That's perfect.